So hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in quite a lot of recent videos I've had a lot of comments asking me how do we order the command protocols pre-game, and obviously what order should we be putting them in. So I wanted to do a video today just to kind of explain my thought process on how to actually order your command protocols. So shout out to all of you guys in the comments that have been asking for this video, and also if you've got any other ideas and suggestions just put them down in the comments down below. And now also we do have a sponsor for today's video, which is the Magnet Baron. Link would be down in the description below. If you're looking to magnetize your minis, then this is your one-stop shop. Head over to the Magnet Baron where you'll find all the magnet bits, the drill bits, they've got the magnet bases, and there's also posable magnets as well if you wanted to have different poses for some of your miniatures. And there's a lot of Necron specific stuff on there, so check the Magnet Baron out, link will be down in the description below. Okay, so command protocols. How do they work and how do you order them? So first of all, after both sides have deployed, but before you determine who will have the first turn, you must assign a different one of these command protocols to each of the 5 battle rounds, and note this down secretly in your army roster. Now if you've got those Necron cards, you can just simply put the Necron cards in order face down, and once you do determine who goes first, you can't actually change this order. Now in addition to that, if your faction's all from the same dynasty code, which it should be, obviously not including dynastic agents, Catan shards, then you select one command protocol that has not been assigned to any of the battle rounds, and this command protocol will be active for every single battle round in addition to the one that you've assigned to all the battle rounds. And every single battle round you're going to be selecting one of those directives, and of course if it's actually your dynastic code which allows you to have both the directives, then yeah, you'll get both the directives every single battle round if that applies to your dynasty code. Just bear in mind though, to activate new command protocols in each of the battle rounds, you will require a character model on the tabletop. If there are no characters left on the table, they've all died. You can't be introducing a new battle round protocol, so you've lost your protocols apart from the one that you've got active for the entire game. That one will remain because that one doesn't last for just a single battle round. So now we're aware of what the command protocols kind of are, let's go through each command protocol, and I'm going to give you my take on where you should be placing it when you're putting them in order. Now of course there's a lot of variables before we begin this video. First of all, it's all going to be dependent on what kind of Necron player you are. Are you an aggressive player? Are you a defensive player? Are you a shooty player? Are you a melee player? There's also other variables such as what secondary objectives you're going to be taking. So for example, if you're not taking any secondary objectives that require actions, then one of the protocols that helps the actions isn't going to be needed for your actual secondary objectives. So it's all going to depend on that. And then most importantly, it's going to depend on what faction you're going up against. And all those variables come into play on your opponent's side as well. Are they aggressive? Are they defensive? So it's going to be very difficult for me to put the 5 protocols into battle round order for you, but I'm going to try my best to give out as many scenarios as possible throughout this video. You'll kind of work out what I'm doing when we start rolling with it. So let's go to the first one, which is the Protocol of Eternal Guardian. Now if you're playing the Necron dynasty, you're going to be gaining both of these directives as opposed to one of them. Just bear that one in mind. So Directive 1, each time an attack is made against a unit, if you didn't make a normal move, advance or fall back in this battle round, the unit will receive light cover. So the first thing of note here, if you are always going second, then you're always going to get light cover because you're not actually moved in your opponent's turn, which is before your turn. So there's a little bit of a hidden gem if you are going second when taking this directive. Now this is going to be really beneficial going up against a shooty faction such as Tau for example, because they're going to be shooting right from turn 1. So if you're not in a terrain feature, then yeah, light cover will be quite beneficial to you. But say if you're going up against Khorne Demons for example, or one of the other melee kind of factions, then this directive is not going to be that useful. Now we move on to Directive 2. So when an enemy unit declares a charge against your unit and you're not within engagement range, you've got the option of holding steady or you get to set to defend. Now if you hold steady, you can fire Overwatch on a 5+ as opposed to a 6, which is pretty nice. And if you set to defend, you can't fire Overwatch, but you get a +1 to your hit roll. This is kind of flip reverse. If you're going up against a shooty faction, you're not going to really need this directive. But for example, if you're going up against Slaanesh Demonettes, they're pretty quick and they're going to get up and in your face, so you can either go for the Overwatch or set to defend. Now this is where I'm going to separate what kind of turns you should be using this command protocol. As for an all game protocol, would I use this? I probably wouldn't use this. Don't get me wrong, light cover all game round is pretty useful, but you are going to be moving, you are going to be advancing with quite a lot of your units. And if they're not advancing or moving, they're probably going to get themselves into a terrain feature anyway for light cover. And Directive 2, you've got to ask yourself, how often do you use Overwatch or set to defend in a single battle? Maybe once in a given game, maybe twice. I don't think it's going to be worth having this all game round. Then as for turn 1, okay, Directive 1 will be useful. Going up against a shooty faction, they're going to be shooting you right from turn 1. But if they're a melee based faction, like we mentioned, this one probably isn't going to be as useful. They're not likely to get the charge off first turn. Now don't get me wrong, some of the maps allow them to get the charge off, some of the vehicles allow them to get the charge off when they disembark, but turn 1 you could say this could be quite useful. Turn 2 is definitely going to be useful, especially for Directive 2. By that stage, melee factions are very likely to get the charge off on your units, so you're definitely going to want that 5+ Overwatch to try and cut down those numbers before they get into engagement range. Now as for turns 3, 4 and 5, I put a question mark there, not because I don't really know, it's just that I'm not going to base my game around this protocol in those particular turns. So if I've not really got a key plan for Eternal Guardian, I'd probably put it aside, look at some of the other ones that we're going to talk about in this video, and then at the end I'll kind of reassess what the best order is. But for now I'm just going to put a question mark. Okay, on to the second one, which is the Protocol of Sudden Storm. Now if you're playing the Nephric Dynasty, you're going to get both of the directives. The Nephric Dynasty isn't that commonly used at the moment, but let's go through them anyway. So Directive 1, you're adding 1 to the move characteristics of all models in this unit. I think this is really useful, especially for Canoptic Scarabs. Getting Ancient Machineries off as early as possible in the most furthest objectives, especially if you've got, say, objective secured and a pre-game 6-inch movement. They're already moving 10 inches on top of that, +1 for the Protocol of Sudden Storm. That's going to be 17 inches of ground that your Canoptic Scarab Swarms are going to swallow up. And yeah, not only is that going to be Ancient Machineries, but it could also be Treasures of Aeons as well. Now Directive 2, if the unit is performing an action, you can still make attacks with the range attacks without the action actually failing. This one is pretty useful. Again, I'm going to mention Ancient Machineries as it's quite a popular one for Necron players, but also raise the banners, especially early game. You want to be raising as many banners as you possibly can, because you can't actually score raise the banners in the first turn, but you can actually do the action in the first turn, ready for the second turn's command phase. So that one is really useful. Now where would I put this one? Would I use it all game? 100% this is an option for using this all game. Adding the extra movement makes your faction very quick, and also being able to perform actions and still firing on every single turn is going to be very handy. You're not 100% going to know on what battle round you're going to be needing to do all of the actions. You may know 1 or 2 of them, but some of the other ones may be iffy, so having it all game just kind of eliminates that bother, because you can do it whenever you want. Now turn 1, definitely again, just in my recent game alone I've had Canoptic Scarab Swarm jump into my enemy deployment zone, take their objective turn 1, do Ancient Machineries. It was a Treasures of Aeons objective as well, and the second part of the primary in fact gave me some points for stealing that objective as well, so it was really handy. And also, as already mentioned, if you want to be doing those banners nice and early in your backlines, you can be doing that too. Turn 2, yep, you can still use this, not a problem. And the other 3 turns, I've left this open. We can revisit this once we kind of know what our game plan is. So number 3 is the Protocol of Vengeful Stars. So this one in my opinion is probably the worst one out of the lot of them. I'm not that keen on this one. I know a few of you guys actually like this protocol, but this one isn't really for me. So let's go through it anyway. So of course if you're playing the Nephric Dynasty, you're going to get both of these directives as opposed to one. Each time a model in the unit makes a ranged attack on an unmodified win roll of a 6, improve the AP by 1. Okay, it's not too bad. Kind of need a lot of shots to make any real benefits from that. But if you're going up against an Armour of Contempt faction, then you've already lost that, haven't you? And Directive 2, each time a model in the unit that makes a ranged attack within half range, the target will not receive the benefits of cover to its saving throw against the attack. Now that directive may be a little bit more useful, especially if you've got AP on your weapons like the Gorse weapons, because if you're going up against say Terminators in terrain features, they've already got the Armour of Contempt, that's taken off 1 AP, and then if they're in light cover, that's virtually taken off another AP, so being able to remove at least one of those is going to be a little bit handy. Now where would I use Protocol of Vengeful Stars? Would I use it all game? If I'm playing the Nephric Dynasty, perhaps, maybe. I think there's other ones that are more useful to the Nephric Dynasty, if I'm honest with you. And as for all the other turns, I've kind of just put a question mark. This is one of those protocols where I leave it till the end. I kind of shove it wherever there's a spot. It's going to have to go in one of these spots, but I'll wait till the end. I don't think it's going to be as useful to me. I mean, you could consider from Directive 1 getting an extra bit of AP using, say, the Gorse Destructors from the Locust Heavy Destroyers. Going up against standard Space Marines, they're going to get a 6+ armor save because of Armor of Contempt. But any boom rolls of a 6 will virtually remove the Armor of Contempt and they won't get a save. But with 3 shots, are you going to get that many boom rolls of a 6? Probably not. Let's move on to number 4, which is Protocol of Hungry Void. Now this one is a little bit more useful, and if you're playing the Novuk Dynasty, you're going to be getting both of these directives as opposed to one. So, Directive 1, each time a model in the unit that makes a melee attack, unmodified wound rolls of a 6, improve the AP by 1. Very similar to what we've just spoke about in the Nephric Dynasty. I'm not really looking at that one, to be honest with you. It's more Directive 2. Each time a model in the unit makes a melee attack, if they've done a charge move, were charged, or performed a heroic intervention, they're going to add 1 to the strength characteristics of their attacks. So all of a sudden your strength 7 weapons such as the Hyperphase Reap Blades or your War Scythes and I'll go into that magic number of strength 8, because a lot of infantry toughnesses are toughness 4, which means you're going to be wounding them on a 2+. That one's really useful, and there are other ways in the codex to actually improve your strength even further, such as the disruption field stratagem. So even if you wanted to get it to strength 9 and be better than those really tanky toughness 8 vehicles, you can also do that too. Now, what position would I put the Protocol of Hungry Void? Would I use it all game? Yeah, if I was playing a melee based dynasty, I definitely would consider using this. You're going to be doing a lot of charge moves within the game if your playstyle is based on getting into melee, so getting lots of +1 to your strength for your weapons is going to be quite handy. Now, not in every case it's going to make a difference. Sometimes a strength 5 going to a strength 6 will still wound on a 3+. It might not make any difference whatsoever, but you kind of got to pick the units that fit that kind of role. Strength 7 War Scythe, Strength 7 Hyperphase Reap Blades, they're two key ones in particular that would really benefit. Now, I've already mentioned the Disruption Field Stratagem to get an extra +1 to your strength. There's also Illumina Zares or even a Plasma Sight model to get a little bit more strength. So there's actually 4 methods in total, including this protocol, to get extra strength to some of your models. Would I use this in turn 1? Now, the answer to that is a flat no. You're not likely going to be getting the charge off in the first battle round. Now, don't get me wrong, you could use the Veil of Darkness really early, make a 9-inch charge. If you are playing the Novak Dynasty, that's going to be an 8-inch charge because they've got a +1 to their charge roll. But if your opponent has screened correctly from deployment, you're not going to be getting the juicy stuff, so it's not going to be worth adding +1 to your strength at this stage of the game. So turn 1, not for me. Turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, yeah, definitely. You're going to be making plenty of charge moves in the middle part of the game, because it is going to take you some time to actually get to your opponent, get into engagement range. Turn 5 I've left open. I'm not really planning for turn 5 in terms of melee attacks. So again, if I've not selected it for either of the other turns, I'm going to be putting it aside and kind of waiting to see what I do with the rest of the cards. But this one I've likely already used it because it's pretty good in most turns there. On to number 5, which is Protocol of Undying Legions. So if you're playing the Zerican Dynasty, you get both of these directives. Directive 1, you can use your Living Metal to regain an additional lost wound, so you're gaining 2 back as opposed to 1. And Directive 2, you can reroll 1 single dice when doing reanimation protocols, and that's every single time you use reanimation protocol, so it could be numerous times on a single unit in a single phase. Depends how many times they get targeted by enemy models. This one's not too bad, to be honest, and would I use this all game? I have done actually in the recent past, and what I tended to do was starting off early with Directive 2, reanimation protocols, because I expected to lose a few infantry models by that stage. Then when it got to the later rounds, that's when I changed the directive to the Living Metal Directive, Directive 1, because that's when my vehicles were starting to lose wounds, so I wanted to kind of replenish those wounds late game. Would I use it turn 1? To be honest with you, I'd use it in all the turns. I think this is a pretty decent protocol. The protocol itself can be used on pretty much every single unit, just depends on what directive you've actually selected. So it's going to be useful right from turn 1 right till turn 5, giving you a bit more resiliency, bringing models back, and yeah, hence why it's called Undying Legions. So that one's pretty good. As for number 6, which is the last one, the Protocol of Conquering Tyrant. So if you're playing the Sortek Dynasty, you're getting both of these. Directive 1, adding 3-inch to the range of units' aura abilities to a maximum of 12. And you're also increasing the range of the following abilities by 3, which will be the Lord's Will from your Necron Lord, My Will Be Done from your Catacomb Command Barge, your Overlord models and the Silent King of course as well, and the Rites of Reanimation abilities from the Technomancer as well as Illumina Zares. So that's Directive 1. That one is actually pretty good because your opponent is most likely going to be thinking about your character models, because it kind of clearly highlights your character abilities, Lord's Will, My Will Be Done and whatnot, but it adds 3 inches to the range of all unit aura abilities. So there's another little hidden gem here. If you look into the custom codes and you look at the option of Rad Wreathed, units with this code will have the following ability. So it's the Rad Wreathed Aura, and I'll say that again, Rad Wreathed Aura. While an enemy unit, excluding vehicles, is within 1 inch of this unit, subtract 1 from the toughness characteristics of the models in the enemy unit. That's a 1-inch aura, but with this command protocol added to that all of a sudden becomes a 4-inch aura. So all of a sudden you don't actually need to be within engagement range of an enemy unit to lower their toughness, which means they can actually be targeted by ranged attacks. I'm talking about infantry range attacks, not your vehicles and that, because they can shoot into combat anyway. But say for example your Necron warriors with the Gorse Reapers, all of a sudden they could be targeting even Death Guard models with toughness 5 because that's been lowered to toughness 4. Now you're wounded on a 3+. So that one's a real strong one. There's a lot of synergy with that one that goes under the radar. Now Directive 2, the unit is eligible to shoot in the turn in which it fell back, but if it does, it'll be a -1 to your hit roll. Now this is very similar to our Royal Warden, except the Royal Warden doesn't give us a -1 to hit. The Royal Warden also allows us to recharge if we wanted to as well. And just by having a Royal Warden, you don't actually need this directive or this command protocol in general. But army-wide, this one isn't too bad, especially if you've got a gun line, Locust Heavy Destroyers, Locust Destroyers, Necron Warriors, Immortals. If you've got a lot of those kind of units, you don't want them getting tagged in combat. You want the ability to be able to fall back from wherever you are in the battlefield. So would I use this one all game? 100% yes. This one's got a lot of synergy as mentioned, especially Directive 1. Used correctly with one of those custom codes Rad Reefed, you can do that all game from every single unit. And don't forget, the character models are also getting their abilities buffed as well. In fact, further to add to that, there is a Warlord trait which is Thrall of the Silent King, which adds 3 inches to the range of the Warlord's aura abilities to a maximum of 9. So now all of a sudden, if you're using a Locust Lord or a Scorpic Lord, a Catacomb Command Barge, with the Rad Reefed ability that's a 1 inch aura, with this command protocol that's going to be a 4 inch aura, and if they've got this Warlord trait Thrall of the Silent King, that's a 7 inch aura for a -1 to toughness of enemy models. So you can put this on a Catacomb Command Barge as mentioned, throw them at the battlefield, right in the dead centre, having a huge 7 inch bubble to remove the toughness. I think that's pretty good. It's going to do a lot of good things for your gun lines. Now, would I use it in turn 1? Probably not. You're not going to be getting that close to enemy units to be able to use that combination, and also your Lord's Will will be done, Rites of Reanimation. If you've deployed correctly, your character should be quite close to the models that they're going to be doing their actual abilities on. So you're not going to really need it for that, and as for falling back, you shouldn't be falling back in turn 1 either. So no, I wouldn't be using this turn 1. But as for all the other turns, yes, I'll definitely use this command protocol in any of the other turns, just not turn 1. So this is what the table looks like once you add this all together. And again, it kind of depends on your playstyle here. It depends on, are you aggressive, are you defensive, your secondaries, your dynasty, the mission itself, the units you have, and your opponent's faction. But if you are really interested in knowing what kind of order to do, then kind of do what I've done. Create a table, look at your kind of playstyle, and try and work out where you would use these command protocols. Just map the command protocols out, but hopefully after a few games under your belt, you'll get them in the correct places. But I think the most important one out of all the command protocols to think about is the all game protocol. I think that one is key. It's really good that we had that since the balanced data slate. It has really given us a lot more power in the competitive scene. So guys, hopefully this is going to help you somewhat. If it has been a helpful video, please remember to like the video and subscribe down below. We've got plenty more tactical videos in the Necron playlist. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.